television screen above the window, an exact broadcast of what the surgeon himself saw through his double-barreled microscope. Generally eager to observe just about anything new, greedy for any unusual experience, easily seduced by the wonders of modern technology, and lulled by the surgeon's dispassionate manner, I said without thinking, "Yes." Of course, the moment I saw Eas's eye, that most vulnerable of organs, tremblingly huge on the screen, I felt that perhaps I had made a mistake in choosing to observe. Magnified 1,000 times, the eyelids looked like desert dunes, the lashes like wind-tossed palms, the creases in the skin like 100 parched arroyos. The rims of the enormous lids were raw and pink, damp and very tender-looking. The blue iris so immense it looked astral, like an exploding star, and the crimson blood vessels were dense and tangled as tree roots. How horribly exposed that eye appeared, how creepily suprahuman. In a sympathetic reaction of discomfort, my own eyes began to blink and water. Presently, a sort of screen slid across the eyeball, like a paper-thin sheet of ice, and then it crumpled, and the eye was bathed in a foam of crystalline bubbles that slowly dissolved. Next, a metal clamp appeared, dug deep beneath the edges of the upper and lower lids, and pried them wide apart. And then a spade-shaped scalpel blade moved into view, hovering half an inch above the glittering eyeball. At the sight of this razor so close to the eye, I felt my face clench into a grimace, and my right hand leaped involuntarily to my throat in a nonsensical gesture of self-defense. I had made a mistake in choosing to watch, but having agreed to do it, I could not now look away. It was a matter of both stubborn pride and obsessive curiosity. The tip of the scalpel pierced the cornea at the edge of the iris and began to carve its way around the brilliant blue circumference. I am not a squeamish person, but at the sight of this piercing it was all I could do to keep myself from shrieking and running out of the room. The cornea, the transparent film that protects the iris and the pupil, is, by the way, one of the most sensitive tissues of the human body, packed with so many hotly vibrating nerves that the slightest intrusion produces an explosion of excruciating pain. If you haven't gleaned this fact from your own life's experience, you are an unusual person indeed. With a small hook, the surgeon lifted the clear circular flap of cornea that he had, but for a small connective strand of tissue, cut free from the eyeball, and flipped it up like the nearly severed lid of a tin can. The black pupil at the center of all this activity continued to stare straight ahead, spookily, not moving a fraction of an inch left or right, as if mesmerized by visions of an apocalyptic future. I looked away from the screen and through the window into the operating room. The surgeon's back was to me. Dressed in a sky-blue robe and puffy blue shower cap, he was hunched over his microscope, his two small eyes pressed to its eyepieces, while a big-hipped nurse stood slightly behind him in the posture of a lobster, elbows crooked and lifted slightly away from her body, gloved hands raised near her ears, and a swab of cotton pincered between the thumb and forefinger of each hand. Several inches beneath the bottom lens of the microscope, Eas's face was bathed in a pool of intense orange light. The surgeon's gloved hands basked and darted in the pool like fish in a tank. More disturbing things happened in this surgery. Drops of liquid were flung rudely into the eye, cotton swabs were raked across the eyeball, an intensely bright and vibrating laser strobe light circled around and around the dilated pupil, and all of this in a manner that seemed blunt and savage. It was like watching a seal pup being torn to shreds by a ravening shark. At some point I realized that in my distress my left hand had joined my right hand at my throat to assist in the self-defense, as if perhaps I was expecting the scalpel to jump out of the screen and take a stab at me. I watched the surgery but tried not to perceive it, saw the violated eye but tried not to comprehend it. Yet it was impossible to remain calm while viewing this lurid physical anathema. The surgical hook appeared again and fitted the slick layer of cornea back over the iris with a jaunty little flip of dismissal. Ho-hum, that one's done. Next, please. I stared, fixated. What would keep the almost severed cornea in place now? What would prevent it from falling out and dangling on Eas's eyelash when he stood up?